I began the project of the walking, my last book, when I wanted to answer a question. And my question had been, what is it exactly that moves people around the world? Why do we leave the places where we are born and move far and die in other places? What is it that pushes humans to behave like whales or birds or elephants or any other species that migrates? And my investigation into this question was first in a very biological, naturalistic school. And I did a lot of research in terms of how animals migrate, period, across species. I wanted to know what it was that made the penguin migrate. And for the case of the penguin, they need a particular temperature to lay their eggs. They cannot successfully have children unless they're in a place where the temperature is between -15 and -20 degrees. -30 is too cold, -10 is too warm. So they all go and take this life-threatening trip across these glaciers to get to a place that's just right. They can lay their eggs. And then they stay there for, I think, some species it's 9 weeks, some species it's 3 months, whatever it is. They stay there until the eggs are fully grown and hatch, and then everybody goes back, including the baby penguins. And I thought to myself, we're species on this planet just like the rest of the species. We're doing the exact same thing. We are moving because we're looking for a place that is the right temperature to do a particular thing, whether that be survive and not get killed, or whether that be make money so that we can eat and not die, whether that be to procreate so that we can make more of ourselves and not die. We're behaving just like any other species on the planet. And this was fascinating to me. Once I had that lens on which to see human migration, everything fell into place. And I wanted to write a story about a man who migrates, who immigrates, and the community of people after the revolution in Iran that immigrated too. So essentially I was writing about the flock as well as the individual in the flock. Because when you see the birds that go from the Arctic to the south of America or whatever they might be going, you see them and they are all one big group. And that group is made of individual birds. And you think to yourself, did they have a conference about when to leave? I mean, how did they decide the day? How did every bird agree to go? And they just go. And so I thought, in the case of humans, how is it similar and how is it different? And how can I tell this with a story? So that is the beginning, the sort of genesis of this book, is to understand what it is that makes us different from these animals and what it is that makes us the same. The one thing that I discovered that is different about humans in terms of like the way that we migrate across the planet is that we are the only species that migrates because of imagination, because of curiosity. Other species migrate because there is a biological imperative that's running through their system. For example, there's a type of bird where as soon as the days become 30 seconds shorter, it leaves. It knows that winter is coming. It can sense the long nights, or by 30 seconds. It's very fine-tuned. And I created this village in the northern part of Iran, the northwestern part of Iran, that is very primitive village. It's 1946, 47, 48, 49, and there's not really electricity or running water available to every family, just sort of in the town square, and they bring in a theater. And the theater introduces movies, and the movies all come from America or Europe. And all of a sudden, this entire generation of children who had never seen anything outside of this village is exposed to worlds, whole entire societies and cultures and landscapes and visions that are not in their village. And then they have to reconcile with themselves. Well, then where is that? If it is not here, then where is that? How do I get there? One child, the protagonist of the book, Saladin, is particularly taken with this world that he sees on the screen, and he becomes obsessed. And it is his curiosity. It is as if the temperature has changed for him, as if the day has come a little bit shorter, and he cannot possibly stay in this place anymore. This notion of these worlds that exist outside where women walk down streets in high heels with their legs showing, and everybody drives cars on clean highways, and there are beaches, He fascinated. And he makes it his life journey to leave the place he is from because he imagines going to a place that is in the screen. And he follows this curiosity as far as he can, which, as a Kurdish boy in the northwestern part of Iran, is not very far. And he is broke, he has no money, and he has no support from his family, who think he's crazy for wanting to leave the village in the first place. And a series of circumstances takes place where he aligns himself to a situation that makes it necessary for him to go. He must, for the sake of surviving, leave. And he is both terrified and exhilarated by the possibility. And so he goes. And in this going, I tell the story of a journey, of a boy who is on a journey to go and find a self that he has not yet met, that is going to be the future him. It's a story of two brothers, and it's the reason one of them, who has never wanted to leave, has to go too. So within sort of the scope of the book, I'm investigating the one soul that's dying to get out and dying to go and be in the world that he sees on the movie screen, and the other soul, who is his older brother, who can't understand why you would ever want to leave the town you were born in. And by putting both of them on this sort of route, this trip away from their home, you get to see both sides. But they take this event that takes place, which is a rather brutal massacre that they have to be a part of, changes everything about how they see themselves. And for a brief moment, they are just in flight without thinking about it. They just go and go and go till they cross the border into Turkey, and then they're going, and then they're going, and they can't turn back. It's already gone too far. And I think in those moments, it's the moments of those pivots that happen in people's lives. For the sake of drama and for the sake of sort of narrative effect, I had to make that a particularly intense moment to which the characters could not say no. So it was completely responsible for their leaving. It's a totally different journey. One of them doesn't make it. One of them makes it all the way, and the other does not. And the journey is different because one of them doesn't want to be on it. You've been on a journey you don't want to be on. It's a completely different journey than a vacation. You know, it's a completely different attitude towards movement when you don't want to go. Your feet are slower, your heart drags, you're not looking for the fastest route. When you do want to go, your attitude towards your environment is very different. I feel like I have been journeying my whole life, and so some of those journeys have been things that I have wanted to do and places I've wanted to go and forward motions that I've wanted to make, and some of those journeys have been things that were chosen for me, and I had no choice but to go. And I feel like I was really well informed on both characters' perspectives because my life has been in motion. I mean, writing fiction is such a magical art, and I write things that have nothing to do with me necessarily. I mean, I'm in it, of course, because I wrote it, so there are questions that I have, but I'm not a man, and I'm not a boy who wants to go follow the cinema, you know. I'm not living in Iran right now, so you have to really sort of, for me, the process is very much one about sitting still and gathering as much research about as many things as possible, and then closing down my mind and letting the voices of these boys come. How are they similar? How are they different? What is it that they love, and what is it that they hate, and who likes their mother versus their father, and you know, what are their desires and attitudes and sort of quirks, and then you just sort of from there hope that a voice will come. A long time by my standards. I mean, my first book I wrote in 8 months, and there was a bit of prep that took a couple of years to get ready to write that book, but this book, I wrote a version of it that took 2 years that I threw away, and then I started from scratch, and that version took another 1.5 years. And in the scope of writing novels, it's not that long. I know people who take 10 years to write a book, but I don't write long books, and so it takes me, you know, it takes me a little while to gain confidence that this is the story that I want to tell, and then if I'm lucky, the story will look back to me and say, I am the story you want to tell, and then everything sort of works. Yeah, I think a lot of it, and the part that injects itself the most is that as a filmmaker, I'm a very visually oriented person, and I think writing can take one of many routes, or two of many routes, and there's one approach to writing which is the internal monologue. And so you open a book, and from the very beginning, you're in a character's head. And you just stay in that character's head, and that is his thoughts, her ideas, her emotions. There's the other kind of writing, which is what I do, which is visually based. And so when you open the book, you are in a scene. And the scene consists of a variety of camera angles on different people. And you are approaching it from a sort of scenic way. And that's how I write. I mean, my filmmaking informs the very first sentence and the very last sentence. I always am looking for ways to take the reader to a perspective. I'm not that interested in getting in the characters' heads. I feel like if I put them in interesting enough places, then the readers can imagine what might be going on in their heads.